welcome to an amazingly new episode of Okon Bros. I'm Eric.
And I'm Michael.
Like, subscribe, share.
And leave comments down below. Thanks, Rob from Toronto.
Yes.
For being our main liker and commenter down below.
So we have a very special guest today.
We always have special guests.
They're very special people.
But this guy especially is special. I got to say, Stephen, I don't read a lot on LinkedIn, but your posts are unbelievable. Introduce this guy because I can't wait to get into this.
Stephen, we connected on LinkedIn, and Stephen Shanker, he's a lawyer, correct? And we connected on LinkedIn, and he deals a lot with our industry, with the chauffeured car industry, especially in New York. And we've had like opinions on lots of topics. And then one thing led to another, and LinkedIn is amazing.
The three of us absolutely hate Uber. I think
we hate Uber.
We're all in agreement that Uber is no good. But before we start that, Stephen, you do these posts on LinkedIn.
Your history posts.
I'm a history buff. I've written a lot of books on history. I want to know how this all started. Start with these insanely cool posts. And you got to send Harvey some of these
I'll send
to post
some
up.
Screenshots.
How do you get these pictures of New York City back in the 1900s?
Believe it or not, I have a friend who has the same type of desire as I do to learn about, I'll call it the days of past of New York City, where you have buildings that are no longer in existence, architecture, and things of historical significance. And I guess one day I just decided to post something that I thought was cool. I think it was a picture of the old Singer building in downtown Broadway, where most people would never know what the Singer building is. And I looked at it and I said, this is absolutely amazing. And most people will never know that it was once the tallest building in the world, and it's no longer with us. And you got a nice, ugly building that's in its place. So one of the things that I posted about it is, maybe people should think about creation rather than destruction, because look what happened here. You created a beautiful building and you destroyed it. Look what's in its place, all in the name of progress. So I got a bunch of comments, a bunch of responses from people who said, I really like it. So I continued to do it. And then the more I did it, the more people responded about, oh, yeah, I remember that, or, oh, that was beautiful, or just a bunch of comments. And it was something that I enjoy doing. And the fact that people respond to me and say, I really love your posts and the things that you write about it. Please keep doing it. Just encourages me even more.
But you know what it is? Like, it keeps you relevant. And that's what's amazing about LinkedIn is he's a lawyer that deals with chauffeur car, among other things, I assume.
In the tri-state area?
We'll learn more about that. But what the cool thing is it's keeping him relevant. It got us connected with him. And
I learn something new every day when I read a Stephen Shanker post.
Right.
Every day. Take us to the beginning. How did you start? Did you always want to be a lawyer? Did you love the ground travel industry?
How did you get hooked up into the ground travel business?
Well, I want to hear the history of who you are.
Well, becoming a lawyer, I don't know if I grew up and said, I want to be a lawyer. I think maybe sometime when I was in college, I said, what am I going to do with a political science degree? Not go into politics. That wasn't my thing. So I said, well, I tend to be able to talk pretty well. I'm good with oration and never back down from a good argument. So I thought law school would be a good thing. And fortunately, I did well in law school. And after I left law school, I worked for 3 years for the New York City Corporation Counsel's office in their workers' comp division. And through the workers' comp process, obviously, I handled a number of cases. But once I left working for the city, I got introduced to one of the livery base owners in New York City, who at the time, this is 2002, I had spoken to them, and they had a problem with regard to employer-employee relationship, being held responsible for workers' comp and other types of benefits, and asked if I could help them out. So I started helping him out, did a good job for him, and then one thing led to another. I started doing more work for him. Then I got introduced to owners of black car bases and luxury limousine bases, then the trade organizations. And I guess my work and reputation was good enough where people started talking, and they said, if you need either legal work, business consultation, someone to, I guess, be what I call your trusted advisor, call Steve. So kind of like, I guess, some people tell me my reputation has preceded myself, but I never let it get to my head.
You know what's funny? I always say this: once you enter the limo industry, you never can get out.
I agree 100%.
And that's on the lawyering side too, which is very, very interesting.
You never hear someone go, I used to own a limousine service.
Yeah, no.
Right. And now I own a floral shop. Like you just never hear that.
Yeah.
It's such but what I love about the industry is it's so easy to scale that, if things are down. I mean, we're in a down period now. We're talking live from coronavirus
to 2020.
2020, right? Hashtag coronavirus 2020. And it's easy to get rid of cars and to scale back on such a huge expense, but it's also easy to, we're slamming busy. We got to add, 10 cars.
I think saying easy is the wrong word. I think that it's doable and you can scale, but all in all, it is heartbreaking to do whatever we're doing right now because,
horrible. It's horrible. It sucks, but you got to wait.
There's nothing we can do.
Nothing you can do. This is a hurricane that's completely out of our control. A tsunami that's completely out of our control. What's your thoughts on what's happening today, Stephen, with coronavirus? We don't really like to get into politics much, but what's your thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, in and of itself, it's a terrible thing, especially now that people are. Believe it or not, this morning I posted something that was kind of funny. How there was a fight that I saw between two women in a shopping mart over a pack of toilet paper. I said, "Is this what the world has come to? That people are fighting over toilet paper? I mean, literally, and involved in a physical altercation." So it's a terrible thing. But if people practice good hygiene, wash your hands, things you should normally do, not sneeze on your neighbor, you probably will be very safe and wouldn't have too much of an issue. Of course, most people are staying out of New York City as much as possible. But as far as ground transportation is concerned, I don't think it could have come at a worse time. I mean, usually or typically the first quarter of every year is slow or slower than it was the preceding quarter at the end of each year. But to come at an already slow time of the year couldn't be worse, especially for companies that are, I'll call on the down slope or still hanging on simply because of what I call the ongoing Uber effect.
Right. That segues into my next question. What are your thoughts on Uber? I mean, go for broke. Just don't hold back. What are your thoughts on Uber? What do you feel about it?
Well, on the one hand, I have to be fair and say one of the things that they did that I think was fantastic is they brought the industry into the 21st century for everybody, 100%. Whether you like it or not.
Yep.
If you weren't into technology, didn't believe in technology, or didn't think you needed technology, they made everybody realize you need technology if you want to stay not only relevant, but stay viable. On the bad side, one of the things that I do as a lawyer for the companies that I represent is I help them with compliance with regulations. Years ago, back in 2002, when I first started, I probably could have memorized, the 25 pages of regulations. Now the Taxi Limousine Commission has a rule book that I refer to as the phone book. So I see all these other companies that have to comply with, Title 59 of the rules of the TLC, which now is up to like 120 pages, where a small company that has, let's say 25 vehicles, they have to have a lawyer there just to interpret the regulations for them.
Yep.
You can't really have a small, honest mom and pop business. Like, you had small livery bases in the outer boroughs who they ran an honest operation. They were never going to be multimillionaires, but they ran a good business. Most of them were immigrants. And it's a sad thing to see that Uber was able to come in and operate and jump into the space without permission, without authorization. By the time the Taxi Limousine came around to regulating them, or Uber agreed to be regulated, it either knocked a bunch of other companies out of business or put them in such a bad position that a lot of them are still reeling from those effects. And unfortunately, I've seen a lot of them either sell to other parties or just simply close out. And that's really the most heartbreaking of it all. As far as their business model themselves, time will tell whether or not they're ever able to actually turn a profit and deal with their insurance issues. I don't particularly believe in the methodology of going in, busting in first, and then asking for forgiveness rather than permission, which is exactly what they did. I admire the fact that they were a disruptor, but a disruptor in the sense where you're not following the law, that sort of thing. I can't not condone as a lawyer, but I can't condone as a business person to say it's fair to come in, act inappropriately, and the government say, all right, no big deal, go ahead, continue the process.
I mean, I agree with everything that you said.
We couldn't have said that any better.
It's interesting having a conversation with you because I want to add to it, but I agree with you.
Yeah, Uber sucks.
So
that's what I'm adding to the whole conversation.
Right.
And not because I want to just say not because Uber affected us, because yes, it affected the industry as a whole, but it didn't really hurt us. Only in Vegas, right? We could all say it hurt us in Vegas, and all these big companies are just going out there right now. They're selling to big money at a really bad time, I might add.
Yeah, no.
At a really bad timing for the guy who bought them, not so much for the guys who sold out.
The deal hasn't closed yet.
Yeah. But Uber really, I didn't even realize that their regulations alone hurt, people trying to open up businesses.
Right.
We talked about that on the previous podcast where it would be impossible to open up a limousine service today, a car service today. You have to have a lot of money. You have to have a lot of backing.
You can get one car, you can have, especially in New York City, you can have one car.
Sure.
But if you want to try and scale higher than that, extremely hard.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't realize.
And that's the Uber effect. And then also the biggest Uber effect on us is insurance.
Yeah. That
we have half the amount of insurance available and we're paying 3 times as much as we used to. Mm-hmm. So I know that you're very involved in the insurance sector of our business. I was wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Well, for a long time now, I'll probably say probably the past 10 years, I say pre-Uber and Lyft, I do research on a regular basis on, at the time, it was 2 things. It was transportation and technology. Technology and transportation. How do the 2 affect each other? And, not saying, I had a crystal ball and I could see down in the future, but I said, to somebody, one day there's going to be this thing that's called an autonomous vehicle. And they said, what are you talking about? I said, well, think about it. In the old days, if I said to you, I've got this great thing that I'm going to sell to you and everybody in the world is going to be buying it. You know what that's called? It's called water. You wouldn't have believed me. If I said to you, 30 years ago, I have something I'm going to sell to you. Right now it's free, but you're going to buy it. Believe it or not, you will. And she said, well, what is that? I said, it's cable TV, about, a coffee shop on every corner. Eventually, this is going to happen. They said, well, okay, well, what's the overall effect of that? And once Uber came to town, I said, well, okay, now I got it. The convergence of technology and transportation has in my opinion, the ability to really revolutionize certain business operations in the ground transportation industry, depending upon, how you operate. So through the period of time when they came in, because they had major issues, and when the TNC laws were being created, I was actively involved in the process. So then my insurance aspect became intertwined with transportation. So my research then involved transportation, insurance, and technology, transportation, and insurance. And it occurred to me that there are so few insurance carriers that provide insurance to ground transportation providers 100%. Or for-hire vehicle bases. Yep. And I said, well, why is that? And over the course of time, it was, insurance carriers only take on risks that they understand. Well, I understand that, but there are insurance carriers who write policies, but they're writing policies for companies that are just far out of whack to the risk that's available. And nowadays, there's technology that's available to essentially underwrite the risk that are based upon real risk factors. Traditionally, insurance is underwritten based upon proxies for risk, things of which indicate how risky you are. How old you are, how long you've been driving, do you have a prior driving record? Where nowadays you have devices and telematics and vehicles that can tell you not whether or not your history tells you'll be a good driver, whether or not you are a good driver. And that technology is being used in the personal auto line section. So as a result of my research and never-ending stop to, keep myself stimulated, I started contacting the either president or CEO of just about every major insurance carrier in the country. And believe it or not, through LinkedIn and a variety of other sources, I actually made contacts with just about all of them. And some of them were very interested in entering the space, and they still are. And what gets me is, they said, well, they would ask me about the industry and ask me how I know this. And I said, well, I've been involved in the industry for so long that, you get to understand how companies operate. And what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to bring those carriers or a group of those carriers to either fleets or bases to be able to say, you should be entitled to get lower insurance if it can be proven through the telematics device that you are a less risky driver. One of the things I think we talked about yesterday, Eric, is, a fleet typically has, let's say 85 to 90% utilization rate of their vehicles. You don't have every vehicle on the street at all times. Mm-hmm. So if you have 10% of your vehicles that are not being used, the risk is virtually none. And that can be proven through the device in the vehicle. So why should you be paying the full load of insurance when the risk is not the same as if you were actually driving the vehicle? So I started working with a company named Stable Insurance to work with reinsurers to bring this product to fleets and service providers, so that way the policies can be customized, not to one size fits all, which would be, let's say, an owner operator, but to the actual fleet, how they operate, how they utilize their risk management, what do they do to minimize risk, what's their background checks of drivers, things like that all affect the price. And when people want to enter a new space, when insurance companies are in a position where they say, well, we got to make more money in different ways, they're looking at it and they're happy to come in, which is why I had spoken to you yesterday, Eric, and said, if this is something that you're interested in, to have a a customized solution for your company, I'm happy to put the parties together.
So is this a real live service that you have now?
It's a real live service. These are people who I deal with, the people who I speak to. I'm not involved in the service, meaning I'm not an insurance broker.
Right.
My motivation is to be able to help those who I can in the industry. Let's call it everybody other than Uber and Lyft. So if there is companies, and more often than not, you know this better than me, insurance is usually one of the main costs for hire transportation. Right. So if that cost can be reduced significantly, nobody at the company is going to be unhappy about that. It's usually something that you'd be very happy about. And also bringing in a new carrier with new blood who's interested in working in this space would be a nice change of pace from a customer service and customer experience sort of position. So my motivation is simply to help the industry and help the people in the industry, as opposed to profiting from it some way.
I commend you. It's unbelievable.
You're doing amazing work, because you could potentially help a lot of mom and pop operations.
Our insurance broker, I'm going to give a big shout out. I could say his name, right?
Yeah,
Robert Pufall. He's like an uncle to Eric and I.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been with him for
he was also
a few
on the
decades.
All-American football team, and he's like 6'5".
No, he's not. He's not. He's about 6 foot. But his back
feels so much taller.
His back is the size of America. His back is shaped like the map of America. This guy is just massive. He played against Brett Favre.
We have to have him on here.
Yeah, we have to have Pufall on. Yeah, the guy is just,
and he's such a good person and such a good man.
He's so warm. He's such amazing energy, and we've been with him for I think 3 decades now.
Yeah,
he found it impossible to get insurance.
Right,
and this is the man who has been taking care of our company of insurance needs for 30 years.
Right.
25 years or something. Right. This is not a 2-year relationship. So what you're doing, helping out, these operators that it's practically impossible to get insurance today.
Right, because the one place where ride sharing affected us was
the insurance. Yep.
Was the insurance. And, you really are doing an amazing public service to our industry. I'm not saying that you're not going to charge for it, because obviously you are.
No. He's going to do it for free, right, Stephen?
For podcasting.
Believe it or not, this whole venture thus far has been more of a project. And at this point, if somebody said, well, why are you doing it? What's your financial interest? And I said, I don't know. I really haven't figured it out yet. I just want to make it happen.
That's
Right.
great. That's great. And I love that you're spearheading this. And I know it's such a dry topic, right? It's like we're talking about insurance now.
It matters.
It matters. Every business,
Yeah.
insurance matters.
Shout out to every single limo operator. You guys got to listen to this podcast.
And who's going
there
through
is
hell.
hope.
Yeah.
There's hope.
There is. I know.
Right. So I wanted to get back to LinkedIn, because I know that's how we connected, and I love talking about LinkedIn and about social marketing and how it keeps you relevant. Why are you doing what you're doing on LinkedIn? Like what's your strategy, and how are you going about posting, and have you gotten positive feedback? Have you actually gotten accounts through LinkedIn? Have you made connections? So how has, because obviously for us, us being on LinkedIn, you being on LinkedIn, we would have never had this opportunity together because we just wouldn't have known each other. So how has LinkedIn specifically affected you?
Well, first it started off as just, I guess kind of like Facebook, where, you connect with some people who and some people use it, for, let's say direct marketing. I mean, what you guys are doing is absolutely amazing, not just because you have me on the show and because I think you have a fantastic company, but I mean, who's doing this? Nobody. Not only did you, come up with an amazing idea, but it's just fantastic. Even up until my comments about the pictures that you have on the walls in your office, like the one with the from what was the movie from Goodfellas in there that Joe Pesci's mom had painted. It's amazing, and I commend you guys for doing it.
Way, the other dog's facing that way.
Yeah.
And he's wielding the knife.
He looks like the guy. Billy Bats.
Looks like someone we know. So originally I started off just, connecting with certain people, and I never did anything that was a direct marketing. Like I never reached out to somebody and said, oh, okay, now we're connected. Hey, can you send me business? Can you do this? Can you do that? Because I don't really operate that way. The way, I operate is I really don't accept clients, whether it's business client or a client for the law firm, unless they come to me from somebody who I know, because I really only want to work with people who I respect and who either I respect and they refer somebody to me, then okay, I respect them. So I don't really do it as a means to market myself. So what I started off doing is I would post my own comments about, this is what I think about today. Or when I started to get more and more into posting the pictures of, old New York City, people would reach out to me. And through connections after connections, it was never, okay, I connected with Joe Schmo, but it was, I connected with Joe Schmo. He liked what I had to say, and he put me in contact with Mr. X, who had a connection to Mr. Y. And then all of a sudden, Mr. Y is calling me up and says, oh, I was referred to you by, I'm not sure who it was, but, and then I tracked it back through LinkedIn. So I started off doing it just as a means to, I don't want to say occupy my time, but one of the things I do like to do is I like to educate. I say, the things I like to do in life are, innovate, educate, and create. And educate is, partially is, educating on the one hand clients. I have to educate them about what the law is and, how to legally operate your business. The other is, sometimes educating judges. You've really got to educate a judge about, the facts of a case and the law of a case. And to a large extent, my other, public service aspect is educating the public about, certain things, whether it involve changes in the law or, in my case, past history of New York City. This, hit me. I lived in New York City for 10 years, and I would walk around the city some days, usually on a day off or on the weekend, and just marvel at the architecture. Yep. So I can look at the pictures and say, wow, they just don't make buildings like that anymore. They just don't make things like that anymore. And the more I posted about it, it would be, all right, so I posted a couple things about history in New York City. And then, of course, I'll usually post something about ground transportation. Of course, when the Taxi and Limousine Commission does something good or bad, I put my comments in about that and how it affects the industry. Anything that comes up about Uber, I don't ever remember posting anything positive about Uber. I never go, totally overboard and, totally, beat them up. But it's usually, this is a bad thing that people around the country, they don't realize it. They don't understand, how the business operates. And, back in, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, people were oblivious to the fact that you're getting into a vehicle with somebody who, let's call it outside of New York City, is, could be a criminal. Are they really doing background checks?
I'm a product of the 80s. Eric and I grew up in the 80s, and what was the thing? Don't get into cars with strangers. Now we're in the 20s, the 2020s. Everyone's getting into cars with strangers. It's pathetic.
Yep.
It's legalized hitchhiking, yes. At least with them. So the more I posted on LinkedIn, the more that I met amazing people like the two of you, where it continuously engages me to post more because I meet more and more amazing people, exactly. Whether it does something business-wise or not. I just, I'd like to be able to meet, solid people in a variety of industries, whether it helps me or my partners or, businesses that I work with or not. That's usually peripheral, but I really enjoy speaking my mind. Somebody said to me once, you're really outspoken. And this was maybe about a year or two ago. And I said, I'm not quite sure what that means. So I left the meeting and I went and looked up outspoken. And it was something like a person who has firmly held beliefs and is not afraid to share them. I said, yeah, that's right. I am outspoken. I don't have a problem saying how I feel.
I got to tell you that being on LinkedIn and selling without selling is the key to everything. I still see these limo operators, and you all know who you are, of going, we got specials this weekend. We got private pickups this weekend. Call us for your aviation. It's like, they're using it for all the wrong reasons.
But we're like, Stephen and I, what we're doing is we're creating value.
You're creating a brand.
And Absolutely. You're creating a brand, and it's the long game.
Yes.
It's the absolute long game, and it's making connections that make connections that make connections.
We picked up some huge business off of LinkedIn. We picked up some amazing accounts on LinkedIn, but we were never looking for it.
Right.
We never, can you use me? I think I've reached out to a couple people in the past and go, I own a global car service.
Sometimes
would love to work
that
with you.
Works. Like one out of 1,000, that will work.
Yeah, but
the long game, it's all about online creates reputation and it creates familiarity.
Yeah.
And that's what, you can run into Stephen in the court and you can be like, I know that guy.
Right.
Where do I know that guy from? And then immediately the ice is broken. And time again, we will walk into client meetings. We will meet new vendors. We will meet new employees.
And they want our autographs.
And they know us already. At the limo show, I was quite the celebrity. I wish you were there. But, we go into things, and having people know who you are before you're there is 50% of the problem of breaking the ice. Because they already know what you're about, and if they like you, it's a slam dunk.
I want to say about technology. You mentioned something before, Stephen, and I found it fascinating. You're pro technology. You're very forward thinking. Tell us your thoughts about autonomous vehicles. Do you think I think they're going to be here, right?
Actually, I don't.
I think eventually they're going to be here. I just. I don't know when.
I don't think that they're going to be here in any meaningful capacity, be outside of like college campuses or a large hospital or something like that, or Disneyland or something.
Steve Ballmer laughed at Steve Jobs and said, "Who's going to pay $1,000 for an iPhone?" And it's the biggest thing in the world. So
yeah, but self-driving. But you know what? Like my phone, I had to restart my phone yesterday. Or you ever get a phone call and you're trying to swipe to answer and it just won't swipe to answer?
That hasn't happened in about 2 phones for me, by the way.
Well, it still happens to me. And I think when that happens, how a self-driving car has to be perfect. And if you're running on software, it can never be.
Well, I know what your opinion on self-driving cars is. I want to ask our guest, Stephen, self-driving cars, yay or nay?
I believe there will come a time where there will be self-driving autonomous vehicles. I think the pitch, let's say 9 years ago, was it was going to be here by 2020. Right. Now, I all know that's not true. I do believe one day that they will be here, but let me go back a little bit to give you at least my theory on why self-driving vehicles is such a big thing, or in our industry. Is my personal opinion is I do believe that Uber and Lyft were smart enough at the outset to say we need to survive for, let's say, 7 to 10 years of being in the red. But there will come a time, and they're working on it either directly or indirectly, where we will get rid of drivers. We will not have to pay drivers. And when the autonomous vehicle comes, that's when they'll turn it from the red into the black, because they won't have to pay the drivers. Yeah, they'll have to pay for other things, but it's not going to be the cost of labor, the cost of litigation, and so forth. Now, whether or not we see them on a mass scale in our lifetimes, I'm not sure. I do believe, yeah, college campuses, smaller towns, areas that are not so densely populated.
Yep.
Some people think it's, impossible, that how could a car ever drive itself? But when you think about it, nowadays computers are, not, okay, you input information. It's a computer nowadays is doing literal artificial intelligence, where it's learning.
Planes fly themselves.
Yeah, but they still have a pilot. And what amazes me,
two pilots.
I said it before and I'll say it again, you have Waymo, you have Google, you have Uber, you have all of these huge companies with hundreds of thousands of employees, right? So why doesn't Uber have 5,000 employees? Why doesn't Google have 5,000 employees? They're automation, machine learning, all of those hit words, all of those keywords. Amazon.
Why isn't it automated?
Automated. Why is Amazon hiring 40,000 people? And that has nothing to do with delivery truck drivers.
Oh, it doesn't?
No. Like, why are they hiring so many different people? I think because there are we have aspects of automation in our business, but we're still relied on. And I think that it's still such a human world where making this connection with Stephen
over a social network.
Me setting up this podcast for today took me about 10 minutes. And I'm sure there's a lot of automation going on in the background. We have 3 cameras in this room. He has his webcam. This sounds great. We have 5 screens. It's recording. But make no mistake, this has to be edited by a person. You would think that we can go upload these videos to some machine and it would edit it perfectly. And it would add subtitles and it would do all of these things. If we can't do that yet, then we're going to have a machine going 60 miles an hour that weighs 3,000 pounds with your kid in the back seat. And you're going to expect that machine to drive perfectly and know every single circumstance that's going to happen. We can't do that.
The airplane does.
But it doesn't, but we still have a pilot in case.
2 pilots.
Exactly.
Right.
Or isn't there like 3 people in the cockpit? I don't even know.
Yeah.
But that's what I can't correlate. That there's so many things that you would seem to be really easy. Just this podcast alone. But that hasn't happened yet. So not saying that it can happen, not saying that self-driving cars can happen, but I don't even know if it's going to be in our kids' lifetime. I really, really don't. When this podcast can be automated, but then we're talking about driving a car, and that's so much more complicated, and there's so many more variables. You don't have to worry about getting into an accident when you're editing a podcast.
Right.
I don't disagree with you, Eric. I think, what you're saying is correct. And in our lifetime, having a fully autonomous vehicle where you don't have somebody behind the wheel is not likely to happen. But on the other hand, some of the things that I post on LinkedIn are kind of like, remember when, so it ties into New York City, remember when you had a cell phone that was the size of a shoebox? Nobody would have ever thought in their lifetime that what Michael is doing right now on his phone could be, a mini computer, 100%. A camera, a calculator, email, phone, the whole thing.
I just want to mention that both of my kids have pink eye. So I'm just texting my wife. You can keep them home. Don't worry. Don't send them to school. I mean, I'm happy that
Kayla got it.
Kayla got pink eye. My son had pink eye for the last 2 days, and now my daughter has it. So
it's just school's going to be close soon anyway.
Yeah. So I'm, they're better off home with every school in our area is closed except our schools.
Our district.
Except our district.
The one in north, the one south,
east, and west.
Yeah,
they're
and
all
we're
closed.
right in the center, and ours are still open. So.
Right. Do you have children, Stephen?
Yeah, 4.
You have 4 kids? My God. What are their ages?
13, 16, 23, and 26.
Gee, I thought you were my age. Jesus.
I'm 48. I'll be 49 later this year.
Congratulations, man. That's unbelievable.
4 kids. We have 4 kids between us, and that's plenty.
It's just
I don't know how you do it.
It's just so much. Dealing with my two. I wanted
time
three.
flies.
I wanted three until I had two, and I was like, I got my boy, I got my girl, I'm done. But yes, you're right. With the technology, I'm texting my wife now to say, keep them home, don't worry about it. You know, we don't have to think about. I don't have to worry if they're going to get coronavirus in their school or whatnot. But they both have pink eye, so I'm now texting on my handheld computer.
Yeah, no doubt it's amazing. No doubt there's a lot of amazing technology, but I still think that has nothing to do with self-driving cars and
I understand.
And all the variables that go along with it.
Steven, I always thought that my brother should have been a lawyer. My parents wanted me to be a lawyer.
No, I can't do schooling.
And I'm not joking, I purposely failed the LSATs. I would say about 5 times. They kept saying, you got to keep trying, because I don't know if this is a blessing or a curse, but I have a photographic memory. I remember the smallest detail on the most obscure thing that you could ever imagine. And my parents always thought that would be to my benefit. And they always pushed me to go into law school. So I got, I went to CW Post, I got an English degree, and they were pushing me to go to law school. And the LSAT to me was like speaking Greek. You know, I didn't understand it, didn't want to understand it. And
I couldn't possibly understand it.
Right. And then I went back and I got a degree in finance from Hofstra. And then I went back to my alma mater, CW Post, Long Island University, and I got my MBA. And it helped. You know, I enjoyed getting my MBA, but at this point, like, I learned so much more sitting and talking to someone like you than I would sitting in a criminal defense class. You know.
Well, I can tell you from my point of view, you're much better off working at the family biz with a smile on your face, working with your mom and your brother, and doing the things that you're doing. Because from my opinion, I can't say I would go back and change what I did. But if anybody asked me today, should you go to law school? My answer would be a resounding no.
Why?
You know, why?
We hear that from
our
every
cousin
lawyer.
Jason. I said, you know, he's got 3 very smart kids, and I say, like, you know, and his wife was a lawyer. She owns a really nice business now, Dana and Jason. And I said, oh, you're gonna have your kids be a lawyer? He goes, I would rather. Like, they be garbage men than be a lawyer. What is this stigma with being a lawyer? Because it seems like,
well, on the one hand, I mean, you said it to begin with. Well, the LSAT. Well, what if the LSATs and the questions there have anything to do with practicing law? Nothing.
I don't know. You tell me.
2 trains are traveling 80 miles an hour each. One has teddy bears, one has feathers. Who gets to the train station first? And you have to logically figure that out and deduct. It's deductive reasoning. It was torture. And Mom's like, do it again. And they gave me tutors and everything. And I was like, if this is the law, I'm not interested.
I want to hear from the lawyer.
Yeah, no. I put in my 2 cents in.
The law school, the LSAT, even the bar exam has nothing to do with practicing law. So you come out, you really know nothing. And your options nowadays is, you know, you're going to have anywhere from $150,000, $175,000 to $250,000 in loans. You have to get a job to be able to pay those loans back. And most people these days can't get a job that is going to pay them enough money to at least pay their loans back. So, you know, starting off in that position is never good. Also, the market's flooded with lawyers. And like anything with supply and demand, where you have, you know, way too much supply, it drives down the quality of the service, because people are saying, well, I have to charge less because I want to be able to get this account, and I'll charge less, but by the nature of charging less, they're probably going to do a poorer job. You know, that's one. 2 is, all the time, I hate to say it, but I go into court. About a third of the work I do is litigation. So I go into court, and, you know, me, the way I am, I'm always professional. I'm always there on time. I always dress nice. I always properly address the court and do the things that you're supposed to do. I see people that come in, it looks like they rolled out of bed wearing their suit. I see, you know, the judge ask a question like, you know, what date did this happen? Like, you know, you don't know this? You know, you got to look through your file. Oh, I don't have that in my file. Well, then go back to your office and get it. So I see people every day where I said, if their client saw how they acted in court and how unprofessional they are, I don't know if they'd want them as their lawyer. And it happens just way too often where it gives the profession a black eye. And more so these days, you have to be different. You have to think outside the box. You've got to have something different. And I say there's two types of lawyers. You have, the worker bee, and then you have the rainmaker. Each has their place in, a firm or their place in society. Sometimes the worker bee, they're just, look, they can't deal with people or talk to somebody on a coherent basis. Or you have the rainmaker who has, great people skills, but couldn't, find their way into the courthouse if you directed them there.
Right.
You've got to have something different than the rest. You've got to have something that stands out. So one of the things, whether intentional or unintentional, when people ask me now what I do, when I tell them, I represent different aspects of the for-hire vehicle industry, people always say to me, "You mean like Uber and Lyft?" I said, "Well, not really. I don't represent Uber and Lyft. Let's just make it clear." But before Uber and Lyft, people were like, "What is that? What's the for-hire vehicle industry?" And then I would explain it to them. So it was something that I enjoyed doing pre-Uber and Lyft, and now the people know more about it. It seems, I was fortunate enough to be able to carve out a niche in an area that was growing at the time. I don't want to say it's shrinking now. It's just become the field has become very complicated for a lot of people, and I feel bad for the smaller operators who are literally scraping two nickels together trying to stay alive, which is whether for the benefit of being able to sleep well at night. I like to be able to do things for other people just out of the goodness of my heart. I'm not saying I'm completely altruistic, but I get calls from people all the time who refer to me by somebody who says, "Oh, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that?" And they say, "How much are you going to charge?" I said, "I'm not going to charge you anything. It's it's my pleasure to just take care of yourself. Hopefully, you can stay in business." And they appreciate it. Saying thank you goes a long way. And going back to the legal profession, I mean, getting two lawyers in a room, you can't talk like normal human beings. It's like, when you're, I said, my statement is most lawyers were kids who were either stuffed in the locker when they were in high school, and this is their way to get back at somebody by being able to cross-examine them, or they were the kids who didn't play well in the sandbox with others. It just translates into a different forum. And you come across that.
I'm sorry for interrupting, Stephen. Those are the two best definitions, because what he just defined, I could shoehorn 4 or 5 lawyers that I know into those two definitions.
Right.
It's
funny.
It's unbelievable. It was absolutely brilliant. I've never heard of that before.
Right.
It was brilliant.
Well, he lives, eats, and breathes this.
So which one were you? Were you the kid that was stuffed into the locker, or the other one?
Neither. I'm just like the one who is has to be different just for the sake of being different.
Right.
I kind of like to stir things up. If somebody said go A, I would go B just because somebody said go A.
Right.
And somebody said to me, "You can't do this, kid." When I wanted to get into some field or take on some type of project.
Right.
If somebody told me you can't do it, I was going to do it because 1, I wanted to prove them wrong, and 2, I never had an inferiority complex. A lot of lawyers, they either have inferiority complexes and they, want to exert their, seemingly powerful self by either, cross-examining somebody or, playing, gamesmanship in court and things of that nature. For me, I guess I don't want to say practicing law at this point is easy, but it's not really the most challenging thing at this point. I'm not minimizing it. What I like to do the most, I like to get involved in the business operations of the ground transportation industry and working with the business side of my client's business and helping them from a business perspective as well as a legal perspective, because I think I bring that to the table. So I was always a little bit different than the others. Fortunately, I wasn't stuffed in the locker, and I believe I always played well with the others in the sandbox. So, when there's a dispute amongst 5 lawyers in a room, I'm the one to stand up and say, "Come on, can't we all get along? Can't you talk one at a time?" It's like, you go back to the basics. Respect the person who is next to you, unless you have a reason to not respect them. I say to people, when it comes to dealing with other lawyers, I always give other lawyers, or really all people for that matter, every professional courtesy I possibly can, unless there's a reason not to. So I'm as nice as can be to everybody, unless. But if you cross me, then that's when the wrath comes out. So that's like what I refer to as my the Incredible Hulk side, where you go from 0 to 1,000 in the span of fraction of a second where you see red. Fortunately, I don't let myself get that excited about it anymore because I just like to be able to say, you know what, I'm going in, I'm doing a good job. As long as I win my cases and my clients like my service, that's what matters to me.
Stephen, let me ask you a question. Where do you think the industry is going, the ground transportation industry?
Where do you see it in 5 years?
Well, I believe a lot of it's going to have to do with, I won't say a lot of it, but a large portion of it is going to have to do with what happens to Uber and Lyft. I don't want to say this is the first issue, but I'm not 100% sold on the fact that they're going to be here 5 years from now.
Right.
I mean, put aside their perspectives of, we don't know if we're ever going to be a profitable company. Well, with what's going on in California with AB5, right. Certain things that are being put forth in New York, they'll politic to get, an exception or a referendum on the ballot. But if their drivers are deemed to be statutory employees, it's game over for them. Right. Whether or not that's remote, I don't know, but it's not outside the realm of possibilities. So I think a lot of it has to do with what happens to them. Let's assume that they stay around because that's probably the more likely event. I think over the past, I'll say 5 years, and I think this will continue, more and more people who were not tech savvy are becoming more tech savvy. The people who were tech savvy are becoming even more business savvy to be able to figure out, to stay ahead of the curve. It's like I always say, I don't work for today. I'm working for next year. The people who think that way, I believe, are the ones who wind up being successful because you're anticipating what may happen. And if the good happens, then great. If the bad happens, you're prepared to deal with it. I've seen too many people who said, this is what I've done in the past. It's always worked in the past. I'm going to continue to do it. And those are the people who, unfortunately, I've seen, dramatic loss in business to the point where they're just about out of business. Right. For example, people that say, hey, I'm going to advertise on AM radio. I'm like, are you kidding?
Right.
Advertising on AM radio these days? I mean, maybe that worked 30 years ago, but not anymore.
It's reinventing yourself. It's reinventing who you are as a person. And that's what this podcast is all about. It's about reinventing, this is so out of Eric's comfort zone. I mean, not at this point. I mean, we're about almost a year into the podcast.
I'm holding my own.
Yeah, no, but this is so against of what Eric felt that was the right thing to do. And the same thing with me with social media. I didn't think it was the right thing to go on LinkedIn because, social media is stupid. But let me tell you something, you have to reinvent yourself, constant and never-ending improvement. And I agree with everything you just said about the industry.
Well, I think the companies that stay ahead of the curve and think to the future and are able to overcome and adapt. And, that's a broad category, but to think outside the box, what are you not doing that others are doing? What are you doing that can be done better, whether that be, in the nature of your dispatch or technology, the vehicles, your employees, the customer service experience. A lot of that all has to do with, the overall effect of, supply and demand, how many drivers you have and what the demand is from the public. And, that's never in perfect harmony, but you want to be able to keep it in perfect harmony as much as possible. One of the things the client had said to me, obviously I won't reveal the client, but client had said to me, where do you think I'm going to be in a couple of years? And I said, well, you're not going to be where you once were, but you will have a slice of New York pie. You just have to find where your slice is and be as good as you can with it.
Absolutely.
So some people may grow, some people may not.
Yeah, I think everything that you said rings true 100%. I think one thing that a lot of operators have to focus on is the human-to-human connection. Mm. Because I think all this technology does, all this LinkedIn does, all the social media marketing does, is that you can do all of those things, but if you can't practice what you preach,
100%,
and you can't fulfill what you're advertising, then it's going to all be for naught. And I think the human-to-human connection still exists, and I think you have to double down on your customer service, on your relationship building skills, and making people feel comfortable with you. And I think that just goes along with any business in general, that if you want to succeed, you must be a people person.
I agree, especially in this industry.
Yeah.
You got to have personality. That's everything.
Yeah.
You got to have personality with your clients. You got to be
Because at this point, like technology, it's all the same cars, it's all the same drivers, it's all the same technology. Everybody can track their cars. Everybody, has an online reservation system. If all that stuff is the same, of course you can have your own innovations. You can have your own secret sauce. You can have your own ways of doing those types of technologies. But ultimately, what it comes down to is the relationship that you make with people.
100%.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that without a doubt. I mean, whether it's a telephone operator or particularly the drivers. I mean, a lot of times the drivers can make or break, not only a trip but a potential account. And I think it's amazing. Yeah. When I first started, following you guys, I saw you having like outdoor barbecue luncheons for your drivers, across the country, and providing I'll call it driver day, where I'm like, nobody's doing this. Nobody that I know, they treat their drivers like, a commodity, where you're giving them, lunch, respect, and treating somebody like a regular human being.
Well, the philosophy behind that is we had an epiphany, and we were going really hard with our clients. We were taking them out. We were
7 nights a week.
We were really creating amazing relationships with them. And then what we thought is, what happens if we do that with everybody that we know? So then that was what kicked off saying, we have to appreciate the drivers more. For every meal that we go and take a client out for, we have to go and do that for the company. We have to go and do that for a vendor. We have to be giving to everybody. And that was the epiphany that we had. And since we started doing that, the love and the energy,
the morale
of the company is through the roof. The morale of our vendors, the morale of our lawyers, of our insurance people, of everybody that we deal with. It becomes an infectious energy. And if you're dealing with somebody and they're not into what you're doing, they'll just fade away.
Right.
And then people who want that infectious energy of being good and being nice, and even being good and being nice does cost more because you have to give more. But the ultimate goal is that you want to give people in more value than you get in return. And
it's from this book that I read 10 years ago. It was called The Science of Getting Rich. More than 10 years ago. It was 11 years ago I read this book, The Science of Getting Rich. It was written in 1910. I don't know if you've ever read it, Stephen. It's Wallace D. Wattles, my favorite book of all time.
No, never read it, but I'm a voracious reader, so I'd be happy to go get it.
Highly recommended, and it got us to this point today in Eric and my career. I bought a copy for everyone in my family and said, read it, and people read it and they didn't apply it. Oh, I mean, they're applying it no matter what. That's the point of it, is that you have a subconscious mind. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a lawyer, limo operator, the president of the United States. You have a subconscious mind, and what you instill in that subconscious mind is going to manifest into your reality. Clearly, Stephen's using it.
Right.
He's using it for the good, and his life it's a manifesting the reality of what he's thinking about.
Right. And listen, it's not all puppy dogs and ice cream. Shitty things still happen.
Like today, what's going on with the coronavirus? It's terrible. But you know what? I have a chapter in there called Setbacks. It's called Setback Schmetback. That setbacks are only there to teach you to keep moving forward and to not lose sight of your goals. And the setback's going to go away. We weathered 9/11. We weathered the 2008 crash. We weathered all those stupid lawsuits.
The writer's strike.
The writer's strike, which was devastating to our company.
Yeah, by far, the writer's strike affected us more than the recession,
100%.
More than the coronavirus, because a large portion of our business is movie productions.
Right.
And we drive all of those movers and shakers in that industry. And when the writer's strike was going on, it was devastating. That was one of the hardest times ever.
Right, but now we're in the middle of coronavirus. We're down. I wouldn't say we're down as much as our competition, but we're definitely feeling it. But we know we're going to come roaring back. Nothing is ever permanent.
Agreed. Yeah, the limitations aren't yours. The issues aren't yours, particular to your company. It's the nature of what's going on outside the four walls of the office. When that changes, everybody will, in one way or another, overcome and adapt, and hopefully be 100%. Better for dealing with it.
So I have one final question, and Michael usually asks this, but I'll ask it since he forgot.
I didn't forget.
What books have been inspirational to you? Books, audio tapes, movies have been inspirational to you that kind of
grow your personal brand.
Yeah, to grow you. Like what has changed your life to make your attitude good?
Interesting. I don't know if I could point to any particular
There was no
book.
aha moment. There was no like aha moment, like, oh, I get it now.
I don't think so. I don't think there was ever any. I mean, I've read lots of books that I enjoyed and would probably have read, 3, 4, 10, 15 times. Movies that I've seen, 500 times, and I still watch them 500 times. Like, Rocky comes on, I could, say the words to it, but I'll still watch it. Right. So my wife says, "Are you watching Rocky again?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm watching Rocky again."
Yep. But that's the whole point. Like, we're big believers in that media and
pop culture
influence you a tremendous amount, and usually those messages are very good. The message in Rocky is unbelievable.
Yep.
Right? So probably in some way or another, Rocky influenced you to be who you are, and the Rocky message is awesome.
Yes, we got our answer. Rocky.
Sylvester Stallone.
One way or another, maybe it was Rocky, maybe not. I think maybe I had an unknown epiphany maybe about 10 years or so ago. I used to always rush to get where I was going, and I'd either just make it or I was sweating getting there. I was just late, and I was making excuses why I was late. And I said, why am I doing this to myself? It's just making my blood pressure go up, making my cholesterol go up. It's making me anxious. And then all of a sudden I realized I was getting places early and on time. I didn't have that anxiety. I went to work with, a happier attitude. I found myself, going out of my way to do nice things for other people just because. For example, I went into a local pharmacy the other day, and a woman, knocked over, I don't know, let's say a whole thing of gum. There were 20 things on the floor. And with a position where I was, I could easily walk out and act like I didn't see it. But I walked over and I picked them all up and I put them back where they were. And the woman said, thank you very much. And, no problem, my pleasure. Just another thing to say, I always want to do as best as I can do and be the best that I can be. And if other people can do that, I think the world would be a much better place. And there's nothing better than working with people who you like and who you respect. There's nothing better than being with people who you like and respect. And you can only be the best that you can be. And in my opinion, the epiphany moment was, I'll be the best that I can be. Other people will be whatever they're going to be. And, hopefully they, one day have their moment where they're not being a bad person. Because at the end of the day, I believe everybody falls on one side or the other. You're either good or you're bad. And, and I don't mean bad like you're a criminal, but where this came from, other than me trying to not be late anymore, I don't know if it came from a book or whatnot, because I get a lot of inspiration from a lot of different sources, whether it be, some things that I post about Lou Gehrig, how, he got up and how he did his speech.
My favorite posts that he does is the menus.
Oh yeah,
the old school menus, because we love simple food,
and we're also very big into health, and we feel that let food be thy medicine type deal, and seeing what people used to eat and how healthy they looked,
strong and vivacious, and their skin was great and stuff like that. And then you go look at the menu from 1918, and it was mutton with kidney,
and cream, real heavy cream from the local farms, that stuff. That gets us excited. And I agree. The menus are awesome. Keep posting menus.
Every time I come across one, I look at it and I want to say, okay, it's not just an old menu. I want to find something in there that's interesting. Like an appetizer was peaches. Was that the thing to order as an appetizer? And then, I'll look at the prices and say, cantaloupe was 10 cents, but the mutton was 25 cents. I'm like, is that, spread, was that, significant back then or not? But then I look at everything else and I'm like, there's always something in there that's kind of gross. But everybody seems to look at them, and the comments that come up are, who's going to eat calf's head, or who's going to eat, this, that, or the other thing. I said, I don't know, not me. I just posted the menu.
Eric and I probably would. Yeah. Stephen, you were fascinating. Tell us where people can find you, the name of your company, and, any social media that you want people to follow you with.
For the most part, believe it or not, I usually keep a low profile.
Okay.
A lot of times I, kind of going back to what I had said before, is I don't advertise my services. I don't advertise what I do. It's all kind of word of mouth. So it's not like I want to say, I don't want anybody to find me. But the
Fair
truth
enough.
of the matter is yeah,
Fair
if somebody wants to find me, you can go on, my website. I don't know, got a bunch of different domain names, whether it be Shanker Law Firm, Shanker PC, or whatever happens to come up. LinkedIn's always a good way. I've
Steven
had
Shanker on
varying,
LinkedIn.
yeah, I've had varying experiences on LinkedIn from, I look at somebody when they want to, friend request you, and some of them say something interesting, but I'm kind of like, I don't know. It seems like they're going to market me something. And then the minute I hit accept, they send me a message, pitching me for whatever. I'm like, oh, okay, great.
What I get those, I get 6, 7 of those a day. What is that? I just, a guy's like, oh,
no imagination,
and they hi, and so it's such a canned DM to me on LinkedIn. It's like, I want to be nice to everyone, but I don't even respond to these people.
I mean, I accept every friend request.
And do they DM you and say like,
they do, and I mean, I'll read it, and I'm not gonna just throw some away just because they did that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it could be worthwhile.
Oh, of course.
Absolutely. And certainly, I want people to treat me the way I would treat anybody else. So right. I'll be nice to anybody.
Fair enough. But, Steven, that was fun, man. Thank you for coming on, and
agreed,
we really appreciate it. And you can come on anytime.
We'll be seeing you on LinkedIn. I know you hooked up with Kevin, so hopefully we'll be working together in the near future. And it was a pleasure. Do
you have any questions for us, or you're good?
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. As you can tell, I don't have a problem speaking or engaging in dialogue.
That was great.
And I think over a short period of time, just the back and forth between myself and Eric, it's kind of like you don't know somebody. You see a picture of them, but you kind of get an idea of what kind of person that they are. So of course, right. Then I start looking at, your posts, then I look at, the videos that you're putting together, and then you learn about your business, the history, I watched the other one the other day with, that you had your mom on as, a guest. And I thought that was amazing. And it's you learn so much about other people. And when you first started doing this, I remember I reached out to Eric and I said something like, if you do a fantastic job, I'd love it. If you ever, want to have a guest on, I'd be more than happy to do it. So when he contacted me, and I think it was via LinkedIn, I don't know if you have my email at the time, he said, do you want to be a guest in our show? I must have taken about 2 seconds to respond.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. This was
absolutely
great. This was so great. It was. We're so on the same page with him.
Yeah. That's great. All right, Steven. Thank you. And
like, subscribe, share, leave comments down below on how awesome Steven is, because he is. And we'll catch you guys next time.
Later.
Thank you very kindly. Look forward to it next time.
Definitely.
Likewise.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.